So now it's time to try and make a wooden box to put the jointer head in so I can ship it out and get it measured by engineers and get a custom Helix head created. So I started out with I started out yesterday. I went and bought some replacement 5/8 11 threads per inch bolts so I don't end up sending my good bolts with this, just on the off chance that they get messed up. But I used those bolts, and I don't have drill bits big enough for that, so I used some Forstner bits, and then you can see that I was able to screw those down onto the little pieces of 2x4, and those were screwed in with some heavy duty bolts or metal screws. I don't know what they're called. They're very heavy-duty screws that go into wood. That I screwed that into the other 2x4, so now we have a 2x4 base, and here I am making a plywood bottom to go underneath those pieces of 2x4 and screw all that together. So the back you can see where the bolts, and there's two of those big screws into the 2x4 under the base, and then I made the base for it, and here I'm making the back piece, and it's either 2x4s or 3/4 inch plywood, and I realized I had to move that little brace because I need to have space to put the 2x4s. And so I got 2x4s in there, got that all across, and yeah, that was just trying to knock out a section that would go down over the bottom pieces of 2x4 such that it would actually fit in there. That way I have a ledge to screw down the top piece later. So, and then I realized the 2x4s on the base got out of whack and they were not straight, and that was going to cause all sorts of problems later, so I figured, okay, I'll try and get them cleaned off. And that was annoying. It more or less worked. The rasp and stuff finally solved it. And here I'm just screwing the bottom and the back pieces in together with lots of screws. The goal for this is to try and have it in two pieces. One is the piece like you see there, where it has the base and the back all attached. Those theoretically should not need detached to take the head apart and measure things. And then I'm going to make a front, top, and sides that's all screwed together, and then those two pieces screw together with a specific set of screws. And they're just trying to figure out, because I've never made one like this before, so it's like, okay, how am I going to do this with the pieces I have? And then luckily I did still have this extra piece of 3/4 inch on the shelf, because otherwise I would have had to go to the store, because I don't have a lot of 3/4 inch plywood, as it turns out. But after I got that sorted, I got that piece in there, cleaned up a bit because I was making all sorts of mess. And then there, the front piece is mostly done, so that's good. So I just temporarily screwed that in place just so I held it so I could get the top put on. So initially I was going to just draw it, and then I figured, okay, I'm just going to measure this instead because that's more accurate. And then cut that piece. And hey, it fits, so that's cool. And then I screwed all the holes that I needed to attach the front and the top together, because again, I want to have this in two big chunks to theoretically make it easier. And then I realized I'm getting close to being able to fill this all up. I should probably finish the inside before I get it too far. So I put some cardboard and taped over the heads because those are sharp. And I got little chunks of 2x4 and jammed that. I had to use a screwdriver to snap a chunk off to jam it up under there, and then screwed that down. So now the head can't move in the back or in the front. And then here I'm making spots where I can put pieces of 2x4 up underneath to hold it down from the top. And then I realized that's not quite thick enough. I need little extra spacers. And then those are a little bit too thick, so I had to again chip off chunks. But that worked. And then once I got all that off, it basically sat with minimal movement. And then I could work on the sides. So again, luckily I had extra piece, and then I say, okay, I want to try and get this such that it has a handle, because otherwise this is over 100 pounds. It's going to be too hard to carry, and somebody's going to drop it. I just know it. They still might. But I glued and screwed with, I put Type-On 3 on between the piece of 2x4 and the sidewall. I put 6 screws coming out from the inside on each handle, and 2 screws from the outside in on each handle. So I'm really hoping with the glue plus 8 screws that actually stays. Again, if somebody drops it or smacks it with something heavy enough, stuff's, wood breaks. But I'm really hoping this holds everything together solidly and we won't have problems. And I did the same thing on the other side where I made the end and then glued and screwed. And here you can kind of see it comes off and goes back on in 2 big chunks, more or less. And then I just work and finally attach the other side, and then it's all attached. And just adding more screws in, and then just finishing screwing the other side on. So now the sides are both attached and should be fully screwed in enough that they should not come apart. And there you can see that goes back on. Then I go through and add all of the screws. Basically, I'm going to mark all of the screws that let the 2 chunks separate and put instructions on the box on how to remove it. Hopefully that will make sense. I don't know if it will, but that theoretically will make it slightly easier, even though there's a bazillion screws, to take it apart again when it gets there. And here's just a picture. It's about 114 pounds, and that's the dimensions. So it worked. Having never built one of these, it didn't go too bad because I had to build it and figure it out as I went. So it's basically it's put together in 2 halves. The bottom and the back side are screwed into or I should say bolted into the head using 5/8 bolts in those big bolts that hold the head on. I used those same bolt holes. So I used that and some washers and some 2x4s to bolt that on, and screwed those with heavy duty screws into other 2x4s and more 2x4s and plywood, and yeah, you can see in the rest of the video what all that fun was. But then what I did, because I figured if I did it in 2 sides, and then you take out specifically the blue ones, so on this end, for example, these are all circled in blue. I'm going to do it much darker before I actually send it. If you take all those out, and you take them along this side out, and you take these blue ones out, then theoretically you can grab the handles, and assuming this is on a nice solid surface, pull this side off and access everything. And then you can use, 1/2-inch wrench to take the head caps off and all that sort of thing to actually access the head and the shaft and such. And it's held in on the back side with, like I said, the bolts. On the front side, I jammed in 2x4s underneath and screwed those down so it can't flop downward. And on the top, I have pieces of wood underneath the top holding that down so it can't move upward. And because it's all bolted in with the bolts, I'm hoping it really can't go side to side. It can't go side to side any more than it does in the machine. I did not put anything on the end to keep it from going back and forth, but it moves a tiny, tiny amount that way, so hopefully that'll be fine. One thing I forgot to do, so I'm probably going to have to take all the blue screws out, is I forgot to put my name and address and all that stuff on the inside. I'm definitely going to put it on the outside and get that all sorted, but I really should also put it on the inside just in case. So the good news is I know which screws to take out to do that. And yeah, there's cracks, but there's not enough room to jam stuff down in, so
Yeah, I'll probably have to do that, but that's okay. And I have the handles are glued on with Type Bond 3. They're screwed in from the outside with 2 screws, and screwed on from the inside with 6 screws. So I'm hoping the combination of those will hold that on. Same on the other side. 2 screws on the outside, 6 from the inside, glued on. I'm hoping that's going to work. It's not waterproof. It's not completely sealed. I'm hoping that's not going to matter. Hopefully it'll be in the trucks most of the time. And if not, well, the water will get down the edges and hopefully it'll run out the bottom. It is held up off the bottom. So unless it got really, really wet, I hope not much would get in there. Either way, if it rusts, I will clean it up when I get it back. Pieces and stuff. So, yeah. But the whole reason this is going like that, like I said, is I'm going to get one of the helical heads made custom. And in order to do that, I need to ship it. In order to ship it, I needed a box. So, now I have a box with handles. And I'm hoping the fact that it has handles will mean it's slightly easier to carry, and people hopefully won't drop it. I mean, it is heavy. I have to put really heavy stickers on and whatnot, but hopefully that's going to work. We'll find out. We'll see how it goes. There isn't a whole lot of moving parts for it that can get damaged. I mean, yes, if the box gets destroyed, the inside's all out of luck. And depending on how much things, even half gets destroyed, or depending on how hard it would get dropped, it theoretically also could break things. But I'm hoping because it's all held in between wood, like I said, if it's just a thump, it's probably all right. If the box gets half destroyed, all bets are off. But that's what the insurance and stuff is for the shipping. But I do think it's going to work. I can pick it up fairly easily with the handles, and fairly easy with both handles if I use 2 hands. Can't do it while holding the phone. But yeah, I think it's going to work.